So that's kind of where I started to, kind of unpack what my definition of fitness is. And I hear this quote multiple times from Laird Hamilton, who's a big wave surfer, and people ask him why he's sober now. And he said, my job is to save people while I'm out there, while they're surfing 50-foot waves. And if I'm kind of hungover or if I'm a little bit stoned, then I'm a liability to the people that are surfing. So my whole thing is don't be a liability. And so, treat your body like you're going to go save somebody's life.
You're listening to the Restoring Human Movement podcast, where movement experts discuss the latest evidence-based practices to help you and your clients move with mastery. And now, your host, Dr. Sebastian Gonzales.
Hey guys, it's Dr. Sebastian Gonzales, your host with the Restoring Human Movement Podcast. Thanks for joining the movement. This is an interview I had with Jesse Prescott. He's a massage therapist out of Flagstaff, Arizona, and we met in an interesting way. We met in an airport, but there was someone who introduced us, so it wasn't just a creepy like, hey, what's up, guy? You want to go talk a little bit? We'll talk about that a little bit as we go forward here. Now, if you're a first-timer to the show, again, I want to welcome you. Thank you for spending about an hour with me and my guest. If you're a clinician, seasoned one, a young one, someone who's been in practice for a long time, this is going to be shit you're going to care about. You're going to like it, all right? I can tell you in full honesty that over the course of doing 2 years of podcasting, I learned so much new shit, so much more stuff than I ever thought I would. And it really changed my clinical practice. And I'm not saying that I'm the best. I'm just saying that I'm better than I used to be. So if you want to take that journey with me, listen to all the old shows. There's some good stuff all the way down into the 60s, 70s. There's good stuff back there, so check it out. If you're a patient and you're a patient that is really interested in what's going on with your body and interested in just the overall theme of how to improve yourself, not just being told what to do, I would call you an advanced patient, one that wants to know a lot more. This is a great podcast for you as well. Clinicians, just know there are some basic topics sometimes in these ones that are, if they look general, it's because they're tools for you to send to your patients. Conversations that you probably had with them before, but they needed a little bit more of a refresher. It's like sending them Star Wars, and they can watch it 10 times. They're going to know it by heart. They're going to know all the plots. They're going to know all the characters. They're going to know all the lines. They're going to know all that shit. So if you want some really well-educated patients, I think sending these is a useful tool to you guys. Now, Jesse, we, again, met in that airport by a friend, Dr. Ben Ramos, and we walked around for basically 4 hours just talking. And the point was that Jesse was going to San Diego, and we were coming into Arizona. And so one of the easiest spots to meet was the airport since we were all in transit. So we just kind of walked around and just bullshit around, and Jesse has a podcast. I didn't know it. I had a podcast. He didn't know it. And probably the conversation around the airport with me, him, and Ben was probably one that could have been recorded. It would have been really valuable. I learned stuff during that, and I think we all did. So it was fun. So we decided, hey, why don't we just have you on and just see what's going on? You're a nice guy. I think I'm a nice guy. But anyways, so you guys decide. Now, before we get into the interview, as always, I want you to learn a little bit more about me because I'm your host, and I think you should like your host. You shouldn't think he's a jerk or an a-hole, and he shouldn't be mystery to you. So this is what we're going to do. So every episode, I tend to add a little bit a personal flair to it so you guys can get to know me better. Now, if you guys don't already know as well, I have mentioned it quite a few times because I'm serious about this thing. I'm serious. I have a book. I didn't know how hard it was to make a book, actually. It's really damn hard to make a book. I actually have an audio version, too. So if you like podcast style, it's on Audible, too. It's called I Will Beat Back Pain. And it's my personal story through 2 ventures of having back pain and being able to document and know what it's like from a patient's perspective and knowing the challenges of mentally wanting to get over the problem or being able to get over the problem and all the fears that you have, right? I'm sure you people have been told a lot of diagnoses that are freaky. Disc degeneration, arthritis, stenosis, you're out of alignment, you're getting old, all that stuff. You've heard it all. And it's very structural based. It's very disabling. It's like, well, I'm degenerated. What am I going to do about it, right? Well, nothing. You're not going to do anything about the degeneration, but you can feel better with that. It doesn't matter. degeneration's not always painful. And I think a lot of clinicians know this. We see them as signs, almost like wrinkles on the face, but they're not painful. So just be aware of that as you go through the book. That the intention is not necessarily to lead people into buying my course. It is mentioned in there. But it's mainly to get people just into care, period. Okay? Yes, there is a course in there, but those are for the people who live in the sticks. So if you live in the sticks and you got nowhere to go, still no excuses because there's help right there. So I want you clinicians to use this book as a tool to get people into your clinic for help, because not everyone takes the help that's out there. So let's use that book. Let's get into the personal story right now, and then we're getting on to Jesse Prescott. All right, so one thing you guys should probably know about me is that I don't want to consider myself a germaphobe here, because I don't mind, like, have you ever heard my story about the yellow feet at the airport? I hate those yellow feet. It's just everybody is there on those same yellow feet, and I never seen him clean nor disinfect that thing. So the whole thing about like airports and airplanes, it drives me a little bit insane. And so I get into the airplane most of the time, and I've never seen anybody clean a seat. I've never seen anybody clean a table, and I've seen people change their children on those tables. And I know about children, and they get a little poopy. So I ain't going to do it, so I bring these little disinfectant wipes, you know. But again, I'm not a germaphobe. Like, I can go multiple times without even like fretting about picking up a weight or a barbell or picking up a shoe or something and putting food in my mouth after. It's not a big deal. But there's something about airports that drive me a little crazy, or public transport. So anyways, I get in there and I actually disinfect the counter or the table in there, and I do the little seat belt, because I guess no one probably cleans that. One time I did the area where your calves go, just because I had a little extra of these disinfectant wipes. And by the way, that thing came off black. Next time you want to see something real dirty, just clean that thing there. Everyone's sweating on it for probably years at a time, and you never clean the darn thing. And so anyways, this one time I only had a couple of those disinfectant wipes left. So I cleaned the thing. I thought, real good, cool, I'm in this good spot here, and there's not any of this poopy germs anywhere. And so this lady comes up, the stewardess comes up, and she's like, hey, can I get you to move? And I said, how come? She's like, well, because so-and-so in the exit row can't do their job, so they wanted to sit where I was sitting. So they basically force moved me. They didn't pull me off the plane like homeboy, but I got in this one seat, and I just disinfected the hell out of the seat, so drove me a little crazy there. And at first I was very self-conscious about doing this, because people think I'm crazy with it. Most of the time, people say, you know what? I've never seen them clean these things. Can I have one too? So I've given them to people on airplanes before, and I keep thinking, if I don't go on enough flights, maybe I'll clean all these seats enough to where now we have nice, clean airplanes. So if you want to be on this movement with me, get those cabbie wipes that you have like in your office and stuff. If you're a clinician, they have them in hospitals. They literally kill everything. So just wipe that thing down. And if you want to expose yourself to your little germs and stuff, go lick the floor somewhere else. But I don't think some place in a high traffic area is the place to go. I wouldn't lick the railing on a bus in San Francisco. Anyways, let's get to the content now. All right, everyone, welcome on Jesse Prescott from Flag.
Yeah, Flagstaff, Arizona.
Locals call it Flag.
Locals call it Flag. I guess.
So we were just talking a little bit about your microphone.
Yeah.
I'll let you introduce yourself on your very deep microphone now.
My very deep microphone that I just bought for a podcast interview, and it turns out, that I'm a podcaster now, which is really weird to me because I just started a podcast because I just wanted to talk to people. And then I interviewed you at the beginning of last week, and you're like, you're a podcaster now. You should get a microphone. And I was like, a microphone? Why didn't I ever think of that?
That was like $20, wasn't it?
It was like $20-$30. Yeah, it's not bad. And the quality just goes up. And so, I see all these, like we were just talking about, I see all these people that do their podcasts with just the AirPods or the standard Apple headphones, which is what I was doing. And, then I was editing the podcast I did with you, and I was like, God, his voice sounds so good. And mine's just kind of like there, but I guess, we could make that better. So then, jumped right onto it, and it's so much better. It's bananas. Yeah, I think, so you don't have a pop filter right here, which I haven't decided whether I can hear anything yet, but apparently when you say the word Prescott, like Prescott, it dulls the right? Yeah. But yeah, I don't know. So I've listened to, I hear people's podcasts because I like them, but also too, I
when I'm going to interview someone, I want to hear what they've already done. And like, I appreciate them putting stuff out because it's hard. And I've done it in my car too with earbuds and stuff. But it drives me fucking crazy to like hear echo and stuff, because it's like the only media you have to digest this entire thing is fucking audio. Like, right. Like, let's just get a mic for $30.
Right. And so it's interesting because it just takes that one voice to tell you something that you already knew that you kind of respond to. You know what I mean? So like, for instance, I've taken 3 rock tape courses and then hosted one. So technically I've taken 5 rock tape courses. And then I was watching a video with Dr. Perry and he's like, hey, tape the system. And I was like, tape the system. Why didn't I ever think of that? And then you're just like, hey bro, get a microphone for your podcast. I'm like, cool, I'll do that right now. Like,
yeah.
I don't know. It's weird.
I'm glad you did. I think it'll. I like your style of podcast is very pure, but it definitely the audio. There was this one experience where I was listening to it was a coffee podcast back in the day, and I was on an airplane, and through the hum of the airplane, I could not physically turn it up louder to hear what it was, and it just turned me off to poor audio is all.
Yeah, no, I got it. And then there's been a few episodes that I've listened to on specific podcasts where I'm really into what they're saying, but I can't hear it. It just drives me nuts. And, like you said, it gets really echoey, or, they start to kind of fade away, and you're just making really important points, like with these people that are like neurologists and stuff. You need to know what they're saying.
Right.
You need to be able to hear it. And so the information that they're giving you is difficult to process anyway. But then if you're struggling to hear what they're saying, then it's even harder. And so, I had that kind of a similar but different experience with the DNS courses. The 3 DNS courses that I took, they're all from Prague. All the women are from Prague, but they're all really soft spoken. And then they have those like, really deep accents. So you're just like, oh my God, focusing so hard on what they're saying that by the time I get done with like the first day, I call my wife. She's like, what'd you learn? I'm like, I don't know. I'm like,
at a lip read.
Yeah. Oh man. Yeah. So it's stepping my game up. I'm pretty excited about it.
Yeah, I think it'll be a game changer. Because you're so the podcast is Kokoro.
Kokoro. Yep. So I got that from Mark Devine from SealFit. So back when I was deep into CrossFit, I wanted to do the most hardcore stuff ever because that's what CrossFitters do. And I came across SealFit and started watching his videos on YouTube, and he does this thing called the Kokoro Camp, which is it's a 48-hour civilian hell week essentially. So you pay them like an astronomical amount of money, and then go and just get tortured for like 50 hours or something like that. And so then I really got into it and looked up what Kokoro meant, and it's Japanese, and it translates to heart, but not the organ, the spirit. Mm-hmm. And then eventually when I went through massage school, I just thought that was a good kind of transition from, my martial arts past to my healer future, because we're all just trying to heal the spirit, right? And
mm-hmm.
then it just kind of evolved from there to where now I have the Kokoro Movement Podcast, and my business is called Kokoro Movement, and, just kind of running with it.
Do people have your nickname as just Kokoro? Or
no.
I
don't. So the only nickname I have is from my mixed martial arts days, and it's just one of those nicknames where you're like, God damn it, that's my nickname now. And
so what is it? Now I want to know what it is.
So we were training. So my boxing gym at the time, everything was all kind of spread out. So I had we were practicing a lot of our MMA and jiu-jitsu stuff in a Taekwondo gym. And then our boxing training was in the corner of this warehouse that we shared with the Unified School District. And there was one point you walk in there, and they have like this command center that's like, I don't know why they had it in there, but it's like you were going to get ready to launch a space shuttle type of command center.
Are they going to call you Commando?
No. But then, so one of the sections of the command center was called Mission Commander. And one of my guys on the team was like, that's your nickname now, Mission Commander. And I'm like, fuck.
You're Mission Commander now?
Yep. So it's like, it's on my mouthpiece and everything.
That's pretty badass. So like, I could do that.
Yeah.
At least it's not something.
It's kind of a mouthful, but.
Well, I'm sure they could shorten it to something.
Yeah.
I'm telling you, Commando.
Commando, Mission Commando. And so, my other friend, he was on the fight team, and he, was depressed about losing his fight and was at the bar by himself being all sad. And some guy just kept bumping into him. And then finally was like, hey, if you touch me again, I'm going to kick your ass. And so my friend just stood up and grabbed his shirt and just knocked him right out and then ran away. And so ever since then, we just called him Sledge. And that's like his nickname. And so, but then he started CrossFit and it just became a verb because we just like, oh, you sledge that, just because he just somehow by the will of whatever was able to get like bench presses and cleans and, farmer carries and all this crazy shit that you shouldn't be able to get. Like if you're fatigued, just stop. But he just sledged it and kept going. So
sledged it.
Yep. So his nickname's a lot better, I think. But
yeah,
I can command missions, I guess.
You can go commando. I'm telling you.
Right.
There's I've been watching. You watch So Justified?
Yeah, dude, I love that show.
Yeah, all the names are amazing. Like Dickie, and like
Dickie.
God, what are the other names? Like there's Boyd, there's Raylan.
Raylan, yep.
Yeah,
they're so good.
It's
and
not like it's not Winona, it's Winona.
Yep. And they're all indicative of the region too. It all makes sense, where he's supposed to be at.
I know, it's perfect. Like there was all like, but all their nicknames were. Like, I gotta go back and look at all the nicknames too. But like, I want a badass nickname, like a Justified nickname, really.
Yeah, I don't know how you get that. I guess you got to go be a schmuck in the deep south, live in the hollers of wherever.
Well, if you're known all around town as like, everyone says like, oh, hey, did you see Commando the other day? It's like there's only one Commando and Flag,
Right.
Like that would be the thing. Big Worm did that on Friday.
Big Worm. So there's some people that exist in Flagstaff, Arizona that far deserve the Commando nickname more than me. I'll tell you. And you see him just hiking around. There's one guy, he's actually a former Marine, I think, and he has like the most epic mullet ever. It's like, an inch of hair on the top, but then it's probably like 2 feet long in the back. And he wears tight jeans and a shirt with the sleeves cut off. And he used to be like this raging alcoholic, but now he's like a recovering alcoholic and is becoming a successful artist. And he just walks all over town. You see him literally everywhere. And he just is always like stomping around with his mullet and his backpack. And he has those big old sunglasses on. It's amazing. That guy's Commando for sure. I don't know if
we got this guy over here in Huntington that like, so he's like, as soon as the sun, so he's probably about like 50 years old or so, and he's like really tan all the time. And it's not just like a tan, like a t-shirt tan. It's like his whole body's tan, and you know it because as soon as the sun comes out, he's got this rack on the back of his bike, and like he'll take all of his clothes off, minus his tighty-whities, and he'll just like roll around. And you're like, how is that guy so fucking tan? It's like, oh, because every time the sun comes out, as long as it's not blistering cold, he'll ride in his tighty-whities all over town, and it's that guy.
It's that guy. Yeah, this guy's super tan, except he doesn't do the tighty-whitey thing. He just has the homemade muscle tee, but wears tight jeans, and yeah, he's pretty. I don't know. It's a thing.
Yeah, well, I'm glad you're not. Yeah, you're right. He is more deserving of Commando.
Yeah.
Now that people know what to expect from your podcast, what do you want to talk about today?
Oh man, we could talk about anything. You mentioned that you were really interested in kind of my educational path, and
yeah, so you're like well, I'll let you tell it. How did you come to think how you do? And you're I'm a massage therapist, and initially
I was really interested in physical therapy, but I just couldn't get past the math classes in the local community college for a myriad of reasons. One of the most resounding one is that I'm terrible at math. I fucking suck at it. And so if you're not passionate about teaching it, then I'm not passionate about learning it. So then I started doing really bad in the more difficult classes like calculus and physics and stuff like that. And then, kind of had this point where I missed passing my physics class by 1 point and started having stress-induced heart palpitations. And my wife, who's a nurse, was like, "You're not dying." And I'm like, "No, I'm dying." And then the CrossFit that I was at the CrossFit gym I was at the time, one of the owners is a ER doc. And I kept telling him my symptoms. He's like, "You're not dying, dude." I'm like, "No, I'm dying." It's like, but it was so bad to where, my heart had such an irregular heartbeat and was like beating so hard that it would like wake my wife up in the middle of the night. And so, then I'm going to rewind like probably 20 years. So I went all the way back to, in 2000, I went to massage school initially, right when I graduated high school, because I looked at my dad, who was a massage therapist at the time, and I was like, he makes a lot of money. I could make a lot of money. And so went to massage school, and then realized very quickly that I was 18 years old and didn't give a shit about owning my own business and didn't really know how to do it and was completely immature and had to go through all these life experiences. And so we're going to flash forward again, like 15 years. And
you're like a Pulp Fiction movie, man.
Yeah, dude. Just getting after it. So then one day I was like walking my dog out in the woods, and I was like, I should go back to massage school because I only need another couple hundred hours before I'm certified in Arizona. And so I went and I found out that they had financial aid and just kind of jumped on it. And it was a 6-month intensive program. And then when I got out, I realized that I didn't want to practice the standard prototypical kind of full body massage stuff. I realized that I could do a lot better, but I didn't really have a direction. So, I bought Gray Cook's book, The Movement, and started reading Movement, and then kind of had a good idea of how the human body was supposed to function, but didn't really. And then a friend of mine, I think you met him at Dr. Snell's course, is Michael Ban.
Oh, Mr. Ban.
Yeah, Mr. Ban.
I know I know all about Mr. Ban.
Yeah, he coached. He was my wife's coach for a long time. And so I started asking him, hey, how do you learn about breathing and how do you learn about core stability? And he started sending me towards all these different directions. And he introduced me to nerve gliding and had me read the sensitive nervous system. And then, it was just kind of off to the races from there. So I really had the DNS focus for like the first year or so. And then started getting really into the nervous system, and then started taking different rock blades courses and rock tape courses. And then they started pushing me towards all these different books and people that I should be following. And then my wife started having a lot of pain in her hip and was trying to kind of figure it out on her own. And she kept pulling up videos. Hey, you need to do this. Hey, you need to do this to me because this will make me feel better. Hey, you need to do this. And then one of the videos was Dr. Perry Nicholson teaching a neurokinetic therapy course. And so then I started really kind of focusing on muscle testing. And then I went to DNS exercise 2, and there was this during the lunch class, or during the lunch period, I should say.
There's a lunch class? I missed that one.
Well, we talk about that a lot, right? That's when you learn the most at these courses, is when you like talk to people and during lunch and before and after class, right? But anyway, yes, during lunch class, I was sitting there eating by myself, and I look over and there's this guy doing all this different muscle testing on another individual in the course. And I was really interested in what he was doing. And then he worked on me the next day, and it turned out that he was a chiropractor, did an hour's session on me and figured out all these neurological dysfunctions in my just everywhere, diaphragm, multifidus, all this different stuff, and then finally got to my occiput and just cracked one vertebrae, and then everything turned back on, and then I was like, fucking, the hell was that? And so what are all these other chiropractors doing? This doesn't make any sense. And so then, went down muscle testing rabbit hole, and it's just rabbit hole after rabbit hole, really. And then, now I just have this completely kind of unique, quote unquote, massage practice that doesn't really fit into anything. So I'm just really, that's one thing that I've been really trying to figure out over the last couple months is like what to call myself. Because people are like, you just do massage, right? I'm like, no, I don't. Just there's a lot of things.
Yeah.
You got to unpack a lot of stuff.
Well, how do you then, when someone comes in or someone contacts you, like how do you communicate that to them that they're not going to just lay there with candles and Barry White?
It's pretty evident right away. And so I think a big part of that is a lot of my clientele has come to me via word of mouth. And so, it comes from the people that I work on, talking to them and being like, hey, this guy doesn't do the normal type of massage, and he really does, is effective in what he does. So you should go see him because he can get rid of your chronic low back pain, or he can get rid of your shoulder pain. And it's, everything I do is just really integrative, and it's makes it really fun because it's like I'm constantly like doing detective work to figure out what the actual issue is. Similar to how your website is, once people go to my website and start to see what I'm about, then they can start to look and see that I'm actually completely different. And then once they want to make an appointment, then I have them fill out my intake form online. And that's really indicative of how I function also. Just big, huge disclaimers. I'm not going to do full body massage. I'm not going to do this. I'm not going to do that. This is what I actually do. And I have like, this is what muscle testing is. This is what we're going to do with it. This is how it works. Do you understand? And then I have them click that. And then this is biofrequency therapy. This is what it is. This is how it works. Do you understand? And I have them so they make sure that they understand everything that I do before they come in.
That's good. Yeah. It's funny. There was a lady that came in to me a little while ago, and she was, she felt better when she was all done with stuff, and I had her for a little bit of time, but the first day she was very reluctant of actually continuing care with me, because she's like, so we have when you first come into my office, there's just like a 500 square foot weight room, and people are, picking up weights and carrying them, and like, not doing anything fancy. It's not like we're throwing weights around. It's just, they're just moving with a weight. And she was an older lady, and she's like, I don't think I'm in the right place. And I'm like, what are you looking for? And she's like, well, I want to feel better and do like, I want to feel better for this problem. And I'm like, well, what do you think is going to get you there? And she's like, massage. And I'm like, okay, well, why don't you give me a chance today, and then we'll just see if we can get you to feel better. And so we did, and through the course of time, she would always drop these little things of like, well, I didn't really get a massage. And I'm like, I know you didn't. How do you feel? And she's like, I feel better. I'm like, good. And then at the end of care, I'm like, how do you feel? And she's like, oh, I feel so much better, and her arm didn't hurt, and her leg didn't hurt, and so on. And then she finally, I think her last statement to me was, I never really got a massage. I'm like, I know you didn't. I never told you were going to.
Right. Yeah, and that's a thing. There's a lot of stuff that I kind of have just personal issues with right now. One of them is being like, I need to be more in the gray, like kind of where you just were. Because right now I'm like super black and white, where people come in and like, this is exactly what I want. And I'm like, well, that's not what I do. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, then I don't want to be here. And I'm like, okay, I'll see you later. And, I just need to work on selling myself more, because I have a big problem with that.
Yeah. Well, I think you're in the right track. Like, I know Ben is better at this than I am. And, they'll say like, hey, I want you to tickle my hair. And he's like, yes, come in, and, he looks at it as an opportunity to educate him, but they just happen to pay him at the same time. And I'll kind of like talk with him on the phone for a little bit of time, and I think it almost sounds like a little bit of an argument, but I'm not being mean about it. But it's like, I know you believe that, but let's try this. And if it really doesn't work, then I'll do what you asked. But
right.
let's see, you know. So I think there is that gray area there, but I know what you mean. You kind of want to educate them, but they're very stuck in their beliefs sometimes about what they believe will work, you know?
Yeah. And, you know, I think that your book really articulates a lot of that very well.
Well, thanks for reading it, by the way, listening to it. I think you listened to it quicker than anyone did.
Well, yeah, I crush it. I don't know. I'm used to listening to, you know, like David Goggins' book, or like right now I'm listening to a book by Graham Hancock, The Fingerprints of the Gods, and that's like a 15-hour book. And so, you know, you know, Ben Ramos is our fearless leader with that. Like, he just listens to audiobooks like it's his job. You know what I mean? Like, while he's driving, while he's cleaning. So I just try and do the same thing. Just listen to audiobooks instead of sitting there and watching TV. Melt my brain. But shit, what the hell were we
Except for
about?
Justified.
Justified, yes. And you know, there's other ones
it helps you communicate with little words.
Right. But so then there's the other problem that I have where, you know, people know what I do and they know how I do it and they know that I can get results, but then they come up to me and are like, oh man, I've been in back pain for 6 weeks. And I'm like, okay, well, call me when you're done being shitty. Like, I don't know. So, you know, instead of being like, hey, why don't you come in for an appointment? We'll see if we can make you feel a little bit better. You know, I'm just like, oh, well, you didn't call me, even though you know what I did. So I almost act offended, which is weird. I don't know.
Yeah. I don't know. I think people tend to pigeonhole us as like what we're good at. And I know that. So when you think about McGill, you think of like the back biomechanics guy, but I'm sure he knows other stuff. And I've had, like, this is one of my epiphanies over the last probably 6 months or so, is that, so I've had some longstanding patients that they came in the past for something and then they improved. And then, so we're kind of on a text message email basis. Like, we just check in and, you know, I like them. I like talking to them. So then they're like, oh, I'm going in for an ankle surgery. I'm like, why? And they're like, oh, because it hurts. I'm like, just come in. Can you come in? And this last guy that I did that with, like, he improved so much in the first day that he's like, should I have the surgery? I'm like, I wouldn't do it yet. Why don't you just try this? And then I realized I texted him later. I said, just do me a favor and, like, whatever hurts, can you just talk to me first? Like, I know it's not arrogant, but I know more than you think, and I'm not just going to work. I know I worked on your back stuff, but let's, like, I'll be assistance. If I can't help you, I'll tell you. But I don't, maybe people don't realize that you can do more than what you helped them with, you know?
Yeah. And there's a lot, you know, I have a kind of a wide scope of practice, I think. And so I can really help people in just a wide variety of ways. And I just need to figure out how to communicate that better, you know, because I think, you know, I believe like in the Gary Vaynerchuk thing where he's talking about everybody's just consumed by social media all the time, you know, so then I try and put stuff out there, but I don't, you know, like I said, I'm trying to figure out how to articulate everything to where it makes sense, to where people are kind of attracted to what I'm doing and then will seek me out from there. And I think the podcast is a good avenue for that as well, because that's where you can really express exactly how you do it and, you know, give people a better idea of how that works. And talking to like-minded people on the podcast, oh, well, this guy took this education from this guy and this guy helps people with this stuff, so he might be able to help me with that stuff too. So, you know, just trying to get it out there. And then, you know, just trying to figure it out. Like if I want to do any kind of Instagram advertising, or if, you know, cause that's a rocky slope too, man. The advertising, just trying to figure out what works and what doesn't.
I know there's a whole other ball game of learning to run a business, not just clinical experience and can you help people, you know?
Yeah. And so the advertising part is something that I really have a hard time with. And right now I'm just like trying to do the best job I can so that those people that come into me go and talk about it. And because that's obviously the best way to get the people that you want and the people that are attracted to you, is because they need what you have, and the people that have that experience talk to them about it, and they're your best sounding board for that.
Well, I think you're on the right track with the podcast too. With I know that I listened to one with Sue the other day, And I think you're asking a lot of the right questions that your patients would want. And there's obviously more advanced topics in there, but I think it's really helpful to do a podcast anyways, because you think about the people who are listening to that stuff, it's like they don't have a short attention span. Like you're like 45-minute hour format, like you have long attention span people, and they're good people,
Yeah.
So
yeah. And that's a big part of the podcast, is just because there's information that I want to have, and then I'm sure everybody else wants to have it, and then so just ask those people those questions, and then you'll get to where you want to go. And initially I started the podcast to kind of encourage massage therapists to seek out education that's outside of the norm. You know what I mean? So like that was a big thing when I got out of massage schools. I didn't really know where to go in order to achieve what I wanted. And so, luckily I had the advice of Michael Band initially, and then, started finding all the right people through all those different education courses. But, when massage therapists first get out, they're like, I guess I'll take a cupping class, and I guess I'll take some Qigong classes, and, I guess I'll take a deep tissue class. Like, you don't really know what to do. And so I think a lot of people get kind of pigeonholed into just doing the prototypical massage therapy their whole life.
What's the continuing education on massage? Is it, you guys have an annual or?
Yeah, so it's every 2 years we have to have 25 hours of continuing education. So it's not much at all. Like I got 150 hours last year, and I don't think that a lot of it counted, because the massage board doesn't really recognize a whole lot of it. So I got to be really cognizant of that. I know that I got enough just through rock tape and neurokinetic therapy alone. But as I've kind of blown my wad, as they say, with spending money on education, I really got to be focused on what I want to take in combination with what counts.
Right.
And so,
well, what does the massage board allow? Like, does it have to be a hands-on? Does it have to be like a deep tissue or restorative, or it has to be in that massage category? Or can it be like actually, like I know with chiropractic, it's like you can, well, sorry, take it back. With CSCS or NSCA, it's like you take an affiliated like sports-based thing, then it counts,
Yeah. And so you really have to look at it. You have to go to their website and see what they allow and what's within those parameters. And so anything that is certified by the massage board is allowed. So like you said, the any kind of manual therapy. So that would be like the neurokinetic therapy, or like Dr. Perry's course, the lymphatic mojo. That's kind of the way to go, like any kind of rock tape course and anything like that. So like, functional range conditioning or dynamic neuromuscular stabilization, or, one of my favorite courses last year was one that these two rock tape instructors did together, which was called Top Down, Bottom Up. And that was Courtney Conley and Joe Lavaca came together and did a fantastic course on both the foot and the hip, and how you can make people better just by focusing on those two things and getting those two things solid. And that, but that wouldn't count either, because or anatomy and motion is another one that I have on my radar. They wouldn't, like, the massage boards aren't looking at people's feet and being like, well, that's a common dysfunction that people should know about. You know what I mean? They're just I don't know, it's really like the knowledge is really basic, and I feel like that might be one of my future goals, is to kind of expand that a little bit to where that not only does the massage board encourage more of that than, but, kind of make it somehow applicable to where all sports massage therapists, quote unquote, have an avenue to take once they get out, because, there's the fascial stretch therapy, which is a lot of other, what sports massage therapists take. And, there's just more out there. And I think, just trying to expand my horizons has been very valuable. But I think that there's a lot of other massage therapists that can benefit from that.
Yeah. Well, I know that with there's like in chiropractic a little bit, like we're getting narrowed down these, I don't want to say just methodologies, but like thought processes, or like, and I know people do it with and this is not bashing on FMS or ART or anything like that, but you get stuck down those routes, and it takes years to get down those routes, and you kind of get stuck in that way of thinking, and you don't really see what's on the other side, and so I think it's just very incomplete, and it'd be nice to be exposed to everything really early and realize all of the stuff that you don't know, but
yeah.
So is it basically that? Sorry, I'm interested with this. So if it's like exercise based, like it doesn't count, like DNS wouldn't count?
No.
What if you put the hands on the hip while you move them?
I think that would take a lot of, I mean, I understand where you're coming from. It makes sense. It makes sense to be in you, but I think that the massage board just doesn't see that as something that's like a valuable information for massage therapists to know.
Really? Well,
yeah. And so that just takes that would take a lot of education on my part to show them the benefits of all of that stuff.
Yeah. There's I should suggest a guy to come onto your show. He's Roy Corey. He's around here. He was he started as a strength coach, and then he realized that he wanted to put his hands on people and be able to do more like manual therapy. So he got a massage license. So he does both now.
Right.
But I don't feel like I see that very often. But you're kind of incorporating. You first started as hands on, then you went into exercise. It's like we're all becoming pretty close to the same, with different scopes of practice.
Right. And I think that it's incredibly valuable because everybody, like the ultimate goal of everything is to have yourself move better, right? That's what the goal is to get everybody to just move optimally, because if you can't, then shit starts going crazy. And that's why people have back pain or knee pain or ankle pain or neck pain, is because they're not moving, and we have this, it's kind of a weird societal narrative where you get old and you should just stop moving. And it's weird to me, you know what I mean? Because then I've had it, there was a couple guys on my fight team that are like, oh, I'm too old for this now. I'm just going to stop doing everything. And I'm like, why? What do you mean? I'm too old for that. I can't do squats. I'm too old, and
you should take the sandwich out of their hands. Hey, you're too old to eat too. You don't fucking deserve it.
Right. You need to earn your sandwich, bro. So,
you know what you're going to get? You're going to get bologna because you're too old for real meat, okay?
That's amazing.
You get turkey bacon.
You get turkey bacon. That, I tell you, I don't get offended very easily, but when I go into Whole Foods and I want bacon and all they have is turkey bacon, I get so offended.
You walk up to the manager, bro, do you understand what's going on in my head right now?
The amount of it's a complete mix of emotions, just sadness and anger, and there's so much happening there that I just can't handle it, and I just have to walk out.
Well, they shouldn't even call it turkey bacon. They should just call it like turkey slivers or something. Like, don't call it bacon. It's not like bacon should be its own animal.
Right?
It's not pork or ham. It's fucking bacon.
That's another thing that I don't really understand is how vegans are like, well, this is a vegan hamburger. And I'm like, why would you try and call it a hamburger then? Or that they have all the fake chicken. Like, why are you trying to replicate something that you're totally against eating? It doesn't make sense.
I don't know. By the way, why is it called a hamburger? It should be a beef burger because there's no ham in it.
I agree. I don't know.
Maybe the early ones were made of ham.
Maybe.
I'm just confused. What is what now?
I know, man. Now I'm thinking all about that.
God.
Instead of where we were going. So.
I forget. So I thought this thought a while back is like you said something about old people not wanting to move anymore, and so I thought there should be like they start putting like those things that go upstairs and like those things on the side of the stairs, those chairs and whatnot. I thought every person over the age of like 50, not that 50's old, but we're just going to condition them now, is they start buying 2-story houses and the bathroom and kitchen are upstairs. Like they have to go up the stairs multiple times a day.
Yeah.
So
I had I had an epiphany at an education course that I took in Dallas. I think we talked about this when you were on my podcast, but I get off the airplane at Dallas Fort Worth, and the second I step foot into that airport, I realized that I was the fittest person in there. And I'm like, holy shit.
In the Dallas airport?
The whole thing. Like, everybody I saw was just like terrible excuses for human beings. I don't really know a different way to say that. But, it got to the point where
Dallas is a central hub, though, so they could be coming from anywhere.
That's what I'm saying. And so I think that's where I kind of started formulating like my personal definition of fitness is just don't be a liability. And, I was walking to the bus that you take to go to your rental car, and there was this lady that was she could barely walk. Mm-hmm. Like, she could barely move. And I was looking at her, and then I started kind of flashing back to all of these different shootings and all these unfortunate events that were happening in Dallas at that time. And I was looking at her being like, there is nobody that's going to save you. Like,
yeah.
And you're not saving anybody. Like, so in an emergency situation, like, everybody's going to look at you and be like, you're no help at all whatsoever.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that's kind of where I started to, kind of unpack what my definition of fitness is. And then I hear this quote multiple times from Laird Hamilton, who's a big wave surfer, and people ask him why he's sober now. And he said, my job is to save people while I'm out there, while they're surfing 50-foot waves. And if I'm kind of hungover or if I'm a little bit stoned, then I'm a liability to the people that are surfing. So my whole thing is don't be a liability. And so, treat your body like you're going to go save somebody's life. And, then that started to really resonate with me after that weekend. And, it started to kind of like, you should be able to move your body. You should be able to, you don't need to run like a 6-minute mile, but you should be able to run a 10-minute mile. Like, you should be able to, at a second's notice, be able to sprint without blowing a hamstring. You should be able, you know what I mean? You should be able to do all these different things. And so that's kind of how I started training myself, is like everything points to don't be a liability for people. Like, you should be able to drag or carry somebody's body weight. Like, you should be able to lift them off the ground. You should be able to do all these different things in order to be a capable human being. Like, you shouldn't, like, if you pull up to Target and you get out of your car and then get immediately into one of those like little cart things, and you don't have an injury and you're just doing that because you're overweight, then get out of that cart thing and spin a few laps around Target every day, and you'll get so much healthier. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think they get into the, I like the liability thing, by the way. You should make a t-shirt with that. Don't be a liability.
Yeah. I think Laird Hamilton trademarked that. I could get sued.
Maybe you could say a different way. I have a friend who, he came up with an original quote. I said it should go on his gravestone. He's a strength coach. He says, don't let your hip mobility be a spinal liability.
Yeah.
So
don't let your hip mobility be a spinal liability. That's amazing.
Yeah, I like that one. You can write that one down. Yep.
Who said that?
Jesse Machado.
That's awesome.
So I think we all kind of know, like, what are the, like, eat vegetables, drink water, move, right. But I think there's all these little barriers of why people don't do it. And so, like, as I mentioned in that book, like, there's all these little things. And I think until we really address those mental barriers or the defeating belief systems, it's really hard to, like, I don't want to, like I can empathize with these people, but I have a really hard time, since I've already been through that with, like, the back thing and twice. It's like, do your work, figure out whatever your hang up is, validate it or invalidate it, and get past it and ask for help. you know, and it's just really tough that people don't do that, and they're very prideful, you know, and stuck in their ways. So,
and that's the other thing that I really appreciated about your book is you really accentuated the fact that once you see somebody like me or somebody like yourself, we're giving you that homework for a reason. And it's so that you can take care of yourself indefinitely. You know what I mean? Like, my job isn't for you to come in once a week. My job is for you to feel better so you can go out and live your life, you know? So then that comes in with, you know, the eating your vegetables, drinking your water, like practice self-care, you know? And it's interesting that there's a few people that have been clients of mine in the past. And when I tell them, this is what you need to do in order to make this go away and make you feel better indefinitely, they almost get angry. You know, like, no, you're supposed to do this. No, you're supposed to take care of yourself. Like, I am just a facilitator to point you in the right direction. You know what I mean? After that, it's on you. You have to take care of yourself for the rest of your life. I'm not going to be here forever. You know what I mean? Like, I have goals and aspirations that aren't going to keep me in Flagstaff. I can't be your solid rock of health. Like, you need to figure it out on your own. But people get really mad because they want you to do stuff. You know what I mean? It's really interesting.
Yeah, I get that. They want an easy way. They want to lay there, I think, sometimes. And I was thinking about the liability thing. You ever think about, like, so you ever have like a wife that comes in and their husband has back pain and they're like, well, I really want to go hiking, but he doesn't want to go, you know? So I think people need a reason to want to feel better that's not really in themselves. So I think I like your liability thing because they're kind of diminishing their partner's life unknowingly and for unselfish. I mean, it's kind of selfish, but they just don't know they're doing it, you know?
Right. And so that's a big thing that I've come across over the last year or so and was really accentuated when I took that course in San Diego, is that a lot of people, a lot of their pain is like largely emotional, you know? And so that's a perfect example of, you know, the wife's just beating this guy down. Hey, I want to go on this hike. And he's like, I don't want to go. And then, so he like manifests an issue to where he can't hike anymore. You know what I mean? Instead of just being an optimal communicator. And so, you know, it's and it's obviously not just the women just giving the men.
I was just thinking that.
It goes the other way too, you know, because I see it in both directions all the time, because that's one of the side effects of my job is I just become really observant and really focusing on what's going on with people. Like, that's why I love airports so much, is because I'm just sitting there, oh, that guy has back pain, oh, that guy has knee pain, oh, that guy's just an emotional disaster. I don't know.
You know the observation at the airport, I think one of my favorites is when you get in the security line and everyone takes their shoes off, right?
Yeah.
And so I don't like those yellow feet, but I wear socks at the airport. And then so people tend to not wear socks, and then they go like this with their feet. Like, so they open them up, right? And they take the medial arch off, and they walk around like this while they're getting through security, and you can see like 3 at a time, and everyone's like pointing at them. It's like, you guys, you should have known, just wear socks. But you can tell the germaphobes.
Yeah. Or if you just realize what your feet are for, which is like walking on the earth, and like then walk on the earth with your feet. You know what I mean? Like, and then the airport won't be a problem, because then you have like, you're used to this weird stuff called dirt, and your feet are calloused and they're strong and ready to rock and roll. And these little yellow footprints aren't going to hurt you.
Those little yellow, you're gonna have to drill that one into me a little bit, because those yellow, like, you know how Al Bundy had nightmares about feet?
Yeah.
Yeah. Those little yellow feet haunt my dreams.
I mean, I'm sure, like, for sure, be prepared and bring some socks, for sure.
Those little yellow feet, bro.
Yeah. And so
I've never seen them clean that.
Never.
And it has more footprints in it than anything on Earth.
Right. But I'm just saying, prepare yourself a little bit. Like, I work out barefoot all the time. I walk around my neighborhood barefoot. You know what I mean?
You know, I do too, but I don't do the yellow feet.
Yeah, I'm sure. Yeah, I guess I just am not as much of a germaphobe.
Well, I have very select germaphobe, and it typically is public transportation or airport.
Yeah, that's probably valid. I should probably, but that's just not a thing for me because I always have socks with my shoes. I guess you know what I mean.
Right.
I don't wear heels or anything like that, so I don't need to just have not like.
You don't wear those little platform ones.
No.
Well, how are you supposed to deadlift then?
I dare lift barefoot.
You can't deadlift unless you have raised heels. Come on, everyone knows that. You can't clean unless you got lifters on.
Yeah, I beg to differ. It's pretty rare. That functional range conditioning course really brought to light how dysfunctional my foot was. And, Dr. Spina asked the perfect question. Like once he showed us what we were supposed to do with our toes and our feet and then asked 80 people to try it out, and probably 80 people couldn't do anything with their foot. Then he was like, well, how often do you use your feet? You're like, and then he's like, so they should probably be stronger, right? And I was like, yeah, they probably should. And, then I started following, Dr. Courtney Conley, and then bought that book, Human Locomotion, and realized that your feet are really fucking important. And if you're not using them, then that's causing dysfunction up and down the chain. And whether your foot is the cause or not, it doesn't hurt to make your feet stronger. So then I just started working out barefoot, and, I can deadlift the same amount and I can clean the same amount without my lifters. So it's interesting. So there's a lot of, that's going to put me on a whole different tangent. So, there's this book by Yuval Noah Harari called Sapiens. And in that book, he talks about stories that humans believe. And like one of them is money. Like, hey, this is worth stuff. And we're like, yeah, it's worth stuff. And like the other one is borders, where you're just like, if you go out in the middle of the desert, you can't be like, hey, this is California right here. And then on the other side of that rock, that's Arizona right there. And you're like, really?
Oh, these phantom things that we all believe to be true, but we just don't question them.
Correct. And one of those stories that's really interesting that I was listening to this podcast with Grant Cardone on the way out to San Diego a couple weeks ago, and he was talking about how the mortgage, just having a mortgage, is like the biggest lie ever. And it's just like this brilliant marketing campaign that like banks were just sitting there being like, how can we get Joe to give us money every month for 30 years?
Let's do more.
I got an idea. Let's loan him money to buy a house, and then let's do this marketing campaign behind it to where it becomes this huge public narrative. And everybody just feels obligated to buy a house, and that's how you become an adult, right? And so I think that lifting shoes are the same way. And, I fell into that trap right away when I bought hook, line, and sinker into CrossFit. I was like, I need lifting shoes so I can lift better.
I get a pair of lifting shoes in my office here that I haven't touched in years either. But yeah. I mean, they, like, you feel so grounded in them at first, then you take them off, you realize that, oh, my feet feel grounded too. I can feel the floor. Let me add one to that book then, if the author of Sapiens listening. Time zones. Holy shit. Like, figuring out on a podcast who you're going to interview, where they're at, and you're like, huh. And Arizona's the worst because you guys don't do it.
Kind of. That's the problem. So there's the reservation, the Navajo and Hopi reservations do honor that.
Oh my God.
And they're smack dab in the middle.
It gets worse.
Of Arizona. So like if you're, so there was one time I was, for my wife's birthday, I wanted to take her to Antelope Canyon in Page. And so I thought we left on time. It's like a 2-hour drive, totally killing it. And then I get onto the reservation, and then the time switches. And then I look at my phone. I'm like, shit, we're an hour late. And then we get into Page. I'm like, oh no, we're on time. Cool. So that was just an emotional roller coaster. But yeah, so try the time zone thing.
I think people just need to like get like we just like there's 24 hours around the globe. That's just what it is. And if you happen to be in Kentucky and in the like you go to work at midnight, but it's daytime, you know, it's like that's just where it is. And like where like that becomes your norm. It's just like, oh, I'm gonna go at 12 o'clock. We just do military time. Like it drives me insane when I'm gonna like interview people. I just don't know what time zone. It's just make a standard time.
Right. And so there's a funny thing, there's this meme that goes around every once in a while, and it's around these two certain times a year when the time switches literally everywhere else. And it's this Native American chief, and he's talking about only the white man would think that you could cut a foot off the top of a blanket and sew it onto the bottom of the blanket and have a longer blanket. Yeah, it's a dumb idea. Why do we still do that?
I think we need to do a movement on this. Yeah, everybody, write your congressman.
Hey, yeah, if Trump wants to salvage the legitimacy of his presidency, he needs to get rid of daylight savings time,
dude. Well, it had to be a global occurrence. Like in China, it's like 3 a.m. and everyone goes to work. You know, in India, everyone goes to work at like that would be their morning time is midnight. You know, it's just like people might fight over who gets to have the quote unquote normal time, but we'll all get used to it. And the next generation won't even know.
But I think it's interesting that so this translates into what we do very well because people get comfortable just doing certain things and they'll complain about it, but then they'll just be like, whatever, we'll just deal with it. You know what I mean? Instead of making the situation better, right? Mm-hmm. And so like, God, when was it? When do you guys change time? Was it November, I think, right?
All I know is spring forward and fall back, and I don't know what day it is.
Because I think I was in San Diego for a course, and they're like, okay, so tomorrow we're coming in at a completely different time, but the same time.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's dumb. Why do we do that? And so, but then people just complain about it for about a week or so, and then just fall right back into it again.
I know.
You know what I mean? And so I think that's really kind of prevalent to what we were talking about earlier, where people are like, well, I have this pain in my back and it's not excruciating, but it just bothers me all the time. And sometimes it's worse and sometimes it's better. And I'm like, yeah, that's not normal. You should come in and let me look at it. You know what I mean? But instead they just establish that as their new normal, you know? So like I had a client come in and I worked on her for a while and, figured out all this neuromuscular dysfunction and got her walked up and walking around. And then I taped it up and then she's like, my back is numb. And I'm like, really? And so I start pushing it and she's like, no, I feel all that. And I'm like, well, your back's not numb. It just doesn't hurt. And she's like, oh.
That was a good dissection of terminology, actually. That was good.
Yeah. Yeah. So, but then she just, so there's people that just get used to being dysfunctional. It's really weird.
Yeah. Yeah. I would agree. And I think that, like, I don't know where it all comes from, but I would imagine one major one is like, oh, I'm getting older. This is what older feels like. And it's just, I find it really, I found it like, if that is the thing, I'm going to go down with the fight. Like, I think it's just whole thing's bullshit. Because I got friends in their 50s who, like, they look good, they feel good, they don't have any major problems. And it's then you look at the other 50-year-olds, and then they see the one who's working, that feels good, and they're like, oh, he's just a lucky one. It's like, that is the biggest cop-out victim, like, BS. It's like, do your work, Get over that hang-up.
He's the anomaly. No, he's the anomaly because he just decided to not stop doing things, Yeah. I'm going to keep doing pull-ups. Everybody's like, wow, that 50-year-old could do pull-ups. And it's not weird to him. It's just weird to you because you don't do pull-ups.
Yeah. So, yeah.
And so I think one of my biggest takeaways from, Perry Nicholson's Primal Movement Chains and like a lot of the DNS courses is, we just don't spend enough time on the ground. And like the weirdest part about our culture is the older we get, the further away from the ground we go. We start getting higher beds because it's hard to get into the lower bed. And it's just all because we stopped moving and stopped spending time down there. And so, the oldest people on earth, from Asia, they sleep on the ground, they eat on the ground, they watch TV on the ground, they do all this stuff on the ground. So they're constantly getting down and getting up. So it's not a scary place for them.
Well, the only thing that we do probably in our society to get closer to the ground as you get older is the midlife crisis when you buy that Corvette.
Right. But then you realize all the terrible life choices that you didn't have, where you're like, oh, squatting is bad for your knees. And then you buy that Corvette and then you're like, shit, now I can't get out of my car.
Yeah, I can only drive this thing once a week because I got to recover from it.
I know. Well, that's a squat. That's how you get out of that car. You know what I mean? It's like, but then it's not a perfect squat either. That's another thing that I really try to preach in my narrative, is that you need to build variance in all your different movements. You're not supposed to just squat this one way, and I think that, that was another important takeaway from the functional range conditioning stuff is like, Dr. Spina, he talks about, yoga, like there's this one way to do the warrior pose. But what if I feel it better this way? No, you got to stand this way like a warrior. No, but I feel the stretch better like this. Well, that's not how you're supposed to do it. Like, so stretch however you feel the stretch. There's no specific way to stretch it. Like, move your hip through all these different ranges of motion and then do it with load and then squat. You know what I mean?
I think people get caught up a little bit with the what is perfect for a sport versus what is perfect, like that's what squatting depth or perfect warrior or handstand or whatever, because they're not realizing the confines of that demand for that sport or yoga or whatever the hell it is,
Yeah, and so that's one of the interesting things that I've been dissecting CrossFit for the last 2 years, even though I've been doing it for close to a decade. You know what I mean? I don't do it as much anymore just because of the sheer volume of all of the movements that they're doing. But that's beside the point. What I'm trying to get to is they're like, this is the way that you're supposed to squat. And I'm like, is it? Like, what if Dave can't squat that way? Like, what if Charlie can't squat below parallel? What if Mary over there shouldn't be squatting at all? Like, then what?
Well, you're supposed to. No. You're supposed to.
You're supposed to squat. Your toes are supposed to be pointed forward. You're supposed to have your knees out over your small toes. You're supposed to have your weight in your heels, and you're supposed to squat below parallel every time. That's not how that works. I think, like, it just doesn't make sense to me that, they could use the functional movement screen. Like, hey, this guy can't squat below parallel. That's why he has low back pain, because he doesn't have a hip. And your hip's a liability for your spine, right? So it's like, I don't know. That's part of where I have a hard time. And then getting people to where they can squat takes a lot of time.
Right.
Before you squat to like what I started calling the competition standard, right? Which is hips below parallel with the quote unquote perfect squat.
Yeah. Well, I think that's where people get into, like I was mentioning earlier, people get stuck down this methodology and they get married to the idea of that route, and they don't really think about there's other situations where other possibilities might be quote unquote right, Right. So I think it happens to a lot of us in our earlier years, and I think as we evolve, I've learned a lot through this podcast that there's other ways, and I'm sure you have too with yours, in your practice.
And I was fortunate enough to start out in jiu-jitsu where you need a lot of hip mobility. So then I came into CrossFit with hip mobility, but I did have hip dysfunction. So, it's just glaringly obvious because I did a video blog for a long time because I was training for a jiu-jitsu tournament, and I started, doing CrossFit as a supplement to that. And then my whole family in California was like, hey, what do you do for your training? And I was like, oh, that's a loaded question. I can't. And so I just started doing a video blog for the 30 days previous to the tournament. And I go back and watch my squat now, and I'm like, ooh, there's a lot going on there, but it's just such an interesting thing to me. And so when I was talking to Andrea Spina about it during one of our bathroom breaks, he was just like, hey, CrossFit's a great sport. And like, it is a sport. Even if people don't think it is, they're like, no, bro, it's a lifestyle. No, it's a sport, and you're training for it because you compete every day. Then you shouldn't be competing every day. And CrossFit's really interesting to me, especially because I'm pulling so far away from it, but I still coach it. It's just trying to figure out the good things about it, and then because I'm really focused on the negatives right now, and so trying to spin a positive narrative to where I still feel like it's acceptable for me to coach people through it.
Yeah. Well, I think everything's got its pros and cons, and I know that when, with CrossFit as being one of them, like we know the benefits, and but the problem is, as healthcare, we want to mitigate the risk, and so I think they all get stuff like that, but I don't know. There's definitely a couple things that I've considered. I'm like, do I want to take a stand on these? It's like, well, they got a lot of money. They would bury me, so I'm not going to even bother with it. So
it's totally not worth it. Right now, I'm just speaking my opinion. You know what I mean? Like, and everybody's entitled to their opinion. But if they're going after somebody like Coca-Cola, I probably shouldn't jump into that fight.
Right? Yeah. I mean, I've done CrossFit for years, and I don't anymore. I think you go through phases of life of different things, and like I've gone through phases where I run more. I have phases where I lift more, and I have phases where I do, nothing. And I think they're all phases, and it doesn't mean it has to be like the only thing forever.
Right. That you don't have to latch onto one thing. I think that's really important for people to kind of understand, especially, listening to your book, like you just grew up playing baseball. And so then once people realize that they don't really have a passion for baseball anymore, they just stop doing things. You know what I mean? They're just like, well, I can't play baseball anymore because my knee hurts, so I'm just going to stop.
Yeah.
No, you could do other stuff.
Well, I think people get lost too with like. So I was thinking about it because in the coming week I'm doing some interviews. People are interviewing me for that book, and I'm like, what interesting story could I tell them? There's an introduction that would kind of like make them understand the mindset of writing the book, and like I only really lift to play baseball. Like so there's a purpose, and I think people get lost in that a little bit. Is they do a shit ton of fitness and weightlifting and CrossFit, and they lose their why. Like there was a purpose at one time, but when you achieve that, like you said, you deadlifted 500 pounds. At some point, there's a more liability than needed to attain what you already did. So
right, and then you see, because then you start to think about. So I think one of the things that I've been contemplating over like the last year or so was like, what do I do for life? You know what I mean? Because I would always be training for something, so now that I've kind of transitioned out of my competition phase, now I'm like trying to wrap my head around how I train for life. And right now, like I'm planning on being alive longer than I've been alive right now. Does that make sense? Like, so if I live for like another 40 years, then that's longer than I've been alive. And that doesn't make sense to my brain. And so how do I train like that? And so, for me, I'm not training for anything specific, really. Like it's my hobby and it's my passion. And I love doing it because I love, exploring all these new different movement patterns that are helping me maintain the strength that I've earned over the last 8 years. And also continue to improve in my mobility and my athleticism. And that's like my hobby. But then, there's other people that pick up CrossFit to be better at baseball or volleyball or whatever it is that they do. But then they just get sucked into the competition aspect of CrossFit and start only training CrossFit. You know what I mean? But then they're unprepared for all these other variables. And so that's where I think a lot of injuries happen, because I've had a lot of CrossFit athletes who used to play a lot of volleyball, and then they started doing CrossFit, and they did CrossFit for 6 years, and they go and play one volleyball game and get injured because they're not used to any kind of explosive lateral motion. You know what I mean? So then they go and dive for that ball and then tweak their knee or their ankle, and they're like, damn it, now I'm injured, So it's really interesting how we just kind of get sucked into this one thing.
Right. Yeah, it's the gym work. I tend to think the gym work is it's a supplemental to make a better athlete, but it shouldn't take precedence over being the athlete or the human or whatever, because we don't have aspirations to be athletes. We just want to live, but it shouldn't take precedence. As we start to wrap up here, what do you want to add? What do you want to cover that we didn't cover?
I think we covered just about everything. We talked about everything from movement to turkey bacon. I think we got to cover it.
I forgot we talked about turkey bacon. Yeah, man.
Oh, man, it's debatable. That might have been the best part of the conversation.
So I usually do a snippet in the beginning. I can't tell if I'm going to do the one with you not wanting to be a liability or just about turkey bacon.
They're both pretty good. I feel like, I don't know. It's good. It's good stuff.
Yeah. Well, man. How can everyone find your podcast and whatnot?
So I'm on Instagram. That's what I'm most active on. So that's Kokoro. That's KOKORO.MVMT. And my website is kokoromovement.com. And so that's pretty much where you can find all my stuff.
And we can just type up on iTunes and Stitcher and all that, and it'll come up.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So I'm not on Stitcher. I'm only on iTunes. I'm just on that one platform.
Oh, we gotta get you. Oh, who's your host? Libsyn?
No, I'm on SoundCloud.
Okay, we'll talk off air.
All right, dude.
Thanks for being on. Don't go anywhere yet, though. But thanks. Right. This is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, man. Jesse, thanks so much for being on. That was amazing. Now, if you guys are looking for Jesse, he is in Flagstaff, Arizona, again, and you can find his podcast, which I will probably butcher the name because I'm just not good at saying names, period, damn it. But it's called the Kokoro Movement Podcast. That's KOKORO Movement Podcast. Look it up on iTunes. So I will put a link in the show notes too, like I said. So if you guys have not already, please review this podcast. Go onto iTunes or Stitcher or wherever you're at and say, hey, I like this. Thanks. I learned a lot. Or, hey, this thing sucks. 1 star. Do better. Whatever it is, just go on there and let me know. Also, too, if you guys are looking for me on iTunes, not on iTunes, sorry. I take that back. If you're looking for me on social media, Instagram is the easiest way to get a hold of me. It's Performance HB. And it's also that on Facebook as well. I'm a little bit less active on Facebook, but I will respond. And I mention this because I would love all the listeners to actually chime in and say, hey, just say hi. How's it going, man? Thanks for doing this podcast. I respect that. Thanks for the work. That's all I need. I like it. And I'm asking for that because I'm not gonna lie, it's lonely on the side of the mic. On the other side here, I'm in a closet almost in my office, and I'm staring at all this foam board. And you never know who's listening on the other side. But I know, I see the numbers. I see people are listening out there. But I don't always hear what changes it made in their life. Because this podcast has changed my life. I know that I've learned a lot of things that I never would have known if I didn't interview the people that I did. And also, too, if I wasn't able to expose some of the vulnerable aspects of the things that I don't know. So and I think that's all what doing a practice is you're just learning as you go, and you get better over time, and all of a sudden you retire and you're like, damn, why'd I retire? It was the top of my game. So I'm trying to hit that point a little sooner, not the retiring, but the top of my game. So as always, leave people better than how you found them, and Dayton Eagle Scout. See you guys.